Hey everyone, welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. I had a really great guest on today. He's a product design leader and the author of four books, Designing Devices, Designing Gestural Interfaces, Designing for Interaction, and Microinteractions. He's currently an assistant professor of practice at CMU's Human-Computer Interaction Institute. Please join me in welcoming Dan Saffer. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Are you ready for 20 questions?
Yes, ready as I'll ever be.
Great. Question one. Tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
Right now, I am, as you said, an assistant professor of the practice at Carnegie Mellon, which means that mostly I'm teaching would-be product designers, product managers, UX designers, UX researchers, and people who are interested in design or just want to learn a little bit about design right now. But that came kind of 25 years after my career, kind of as a designer and a writer. And that's kind of what I do. I design things, I write books about designing things, and now I'm working a lot with designing for AI. That's kind of where I've fallen. When I arrived at Carnegie Mellon, people were like, "Oh, well, you're interested in AI? Well, we've been doing this for decades, so here you go." So it's been great to return to where I learned, got my master's in design. So it's been fun to come back and teach, and I'm working on a book and on design and AI. So it kind of is nice to kind of be full circle and back around, kind of sharing knowledge with impressionable young minds.
Great. Ties well into number two. What's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
Key piece of knowledge, I think is just because I have a humanities background and I
Mm.
have a background in writing, and I think that changed kind of the way that I approached the practice of doing design, because I came at it from a more of a logic and a words perspective, whereas a lot of people come at it from a visual perspective. And over time, I've trained myself to be a lot more visual. I have a great visual eye now, thanks to 25 years of doing this. And uh, but but I think that just having that background in critical thinking, in putting pieces together, in thinking about like how one thing affects the other is, I think, uh, kind of, one of my secret sauces. I think the other thing is what I kind of wrote about in the Microinteractions book is that love of a great little detail. I love the little things that really enhance a design, that really make it polished, make it pop, make it differentiated, make it really like more enjoyable to use. So I'm always kind of on the lookout for that kind of stuff. And so I think those are the things that have really separated me from a lot of my peers.
Perfect. And just a note for the audience, if you guys are interested in a related big episode, check out the episode with Don Norman. Question three, why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
Yeah, and Don was nice enough to write the forward to the Microinteractions book, so I'm super happy about that.
Um,
Um, why do I do what I do? That is a great question that I have no good answer for. I My parents, my mom is a psychologist and my dad is a plumber. So I sort of think that my job now as a designer is kind of a combination of those two things, where it's like, well, you have to think about people and their feelings and their relationships and the context of their life. And then kind of on the kind of technical side, it's like, well, this piece has to fit into that piece, and this has to work in order for that to work. There's got to be this tent pole, this, this pipe, to use plumbing terminology, to has to fit into that pipe. So it's a little bit of both of those two things, like putting things together almost in a puzzle-like or engineering-like or just craftsman-like way, and then this kind of overlay of thinking about people and thinking about their needs and what they're trying to accomplish. So I think kind of having those two streams of things really kind of put me at the right place at the right time. And I was definitely kind of at the right place at the right time because I graduated college in the early 90s, and within a couple years kind of the web had started to take off. So I was working in New York at a book publisher, and they were sort of like, well, have you ever done anything with the web? And I'm like, well, I have a web browser. And they're like, great, you're going to start working on our website. And so that's kind of how I got started in this. And then I was just lucky. I got lucky in timing, and then I, met a bunch of great people and worked at a lot of really interesting companies, and the rest is kind of history.
Perfect. That's great. So some people struggle with number four, and the question is, what does your future look like?
I mean, no one knows, right? I could get off this podcast and get hit by a bus, but I mean, I'm hoping that. I mean, the great thing about design right now, and I would probably widen that to say creativity right now, is that all of a sudden we're having these just amazing new tools kind of tossed at us, and we can debate the ethics of the tools. We can debate should there be these tools, what should they be working on. But I think uh, there have been like three profound times in since I've been working in kind of this industry, and we're in one of them. And I think that there are just so many amazing things coming that I'm hoping for the next couple of years, it's trying to figure that out. It's trying to take this technology that we now have, which is AI, and be figure out like how to make this thing humane, how to make this thing, work for people instead of replacing people. Are there going to be all these new jobs? Are there going to, what's that going to be like? What is the role of a designer or a writer or an artist in this new world? I think those things are just really, really fascinating, meaty questions. And I expect that we're going to be wrestling with them for at least 10 to 15, maybe forever. Yeah, but at least for a good long while.
Mm.
And so I'm really uh I'm looking forward to it, and I'm terrified of it as well, just because the implications of the technology are so profound.
Mm. Great. Five we say is unique to this show. The question is, let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
It's a really interesting question because when I started my career, I was in New York. And so the places I worked for were book publisher, agencies, and financial services. And those are very New York kind of jobs, right? And then when I moved to San Francisco, I had a lot of uh, uh, tech jobs, tech consultancies or robotics companies or wearables companies or working for, large companies like Microsoft or Samsung or those kinds of things, Twitter, where I worked, all those. So I think location and has just an enormous impact on who you're exposed to, what you're exposed to, and I definitely feel like my career has been very shaped by coming from those from being starting it in one place and working for 15 years, 20 years in San Francisco, and then now working in Pittsburgh, which is a really interesting. I like to think of it as a post industrial city where it's gone through these really interesting transformations,
Mm,
and yet it is still much more of a blue collar town than either San Francisco or New York. And I think it's actually made me like more sensitive and a better designer
mm,
to have been here and think about and just, have like the different perspectives that being in a blue collar town, or at least blue collar roots town, does than working, in San Francisco, where most of the people that you bump into are, they're professionals with advanced degrees. And here that's just not true. You
mm,
have now definitely, I work at a university here and I meet and interact with some of the smartest people in the world at Carnegie Mellon. But it does give, I think, your work a different flavor when you are in a different location. I think certain things certain things kind of resonate more or less, or you just think about them more or less. And
great.
I think one of the interesting things about place just in terms of your career is who do you meet? Who do you talk to?
Mm,
Who do what connections can you make? This is, I mean, in New York and San Francisco, it's kind of famous that you'll like be like, oh, hey, I was at a pizza shop and I met this person who's doing a startup and now and now we're doing a startup together. Or, oh, I met this person at a party and now they're my boss. Or those kinds of connections are really fostered by place. And I think where you work is so influenced by the kind of chance encounters that you have in a place. And I think, and not just I think where you work, but what you work on. I mean, if you're going to stay here in Pittsburgh, you're probably going to work in financial services, education, or healthcare. Those are our big three industries here.
mm,
If you work in New York, you're probably going to work in publishing or finance or advertising. Or, if you work in DC, you're going to work, for the government, if there are any of those jobs left anymore.
mm,
And if you're going to be in LA, you're going to work on certain types of things. So, um, I think place has a big, bigger impact on our lives and work than we give it credit to.
mm. Great. Okay, number six. You're starting from the beginning. What advice do you give your former younger self?
Buy Apple stock. I mean, um, th things, yeah. I mean, I think the things that I worried about so much when I was younger were things like, oh, I can't do everything that the person sitting next to me can do,
Mm,
or I can't do I can't do all of it. I can't make visual designs from scratch is one example. That was never my strongest suit. I was never much of a UI kind of guy.
mm,
And so stuff like that, I spent an inordinate amount of time worrying about, like, oh, is this going to really harm my career? And I would go to great lengths to hide that, or just not talk about it, or just kind of be like, yeah, yeah, I kind of leave that to somebody else. Um, Rather than just, admit it, like, look, this is not my strong thing. If you're hiring me for this, you're probably hiring the wrong person. Um, you should go hire someone else or pair me with someone who's really strong at this because I'm really strong at these things, just not at these. And so it took me a while to figure out kind of what my strengths were and to not disparage all my weaknesses,
mm.
if that makes sense.
Great. So what's a day in your life like?
It depends quite a bit on whether I'm teaching that day or not.
Mm,
Um, Usually I teach 2 to 3 classes a semester, and sometimes they're every day during the day, or like every afternoon I teach, or sometimes like this semester, they're Tuesday, Thursdays. And on those days, I'm in the classroom, I'm talking to students, I'm on campus. I'm or before I get there, I'm usually prepping for the class, which is usually things like looking at discussions or preparing the lecture or tweaking the lecture, thinking about those kinds of things. And then the days where I'm not, I am either preparing for future classes or I'm doing grading or those kinds of things. Or I am doing writing at this point. So I've been working on this designing for AI books. So I try to block out time on the days where I'm not teaching in order to write on that book. So I have these kind of 3 hour blocks that I try to do on the days where I'm not teaching, just so I have the headspace to really work on the book. Now, that sometimes doesn't happen. I mean, sometimes things intrude on that. Like there's emails from students or different fire drills or grading takes longer than I think or those kinds of things. I have not been as good in my middle-aged professorship at being rigid about blocking out that creative time of saying, okay, this is my time. It is not touchable. I will not think about anything. I will not do anything during this time. Whereas before, when I wrote like my other books, I was very, very rigid about that. But it was also I was younger. I had a family, and so the only way that I could do writing was early in the morning at like 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., kind of before work and before like I had to get my kid to school and all the other stuff that kind of happened throughout the day. And so I was very disciplined about doing that even though I'm not I'm not a morning person at all. But that was the way that I was able to write those books.
Mm.
Now I have a lot more time. My kids are grown, and so I like to think, oh, I have as much time in I have all the time in the world, and so I tend to procrastinate and I tend to do less simply because I don't have this like harsh time box um, that I usually have, or that I used to have. So that's kind of my typical days are kind of like revolve around school. And then during the summers, it also depends on whether I'm teaching a class or not. Sometimes during the summer, I'm like revising a class. So for instance, when I got to CMU 2 years ago, we started to think, okay, well, we should probably be revising the interaction design curriculum because things had changed since the last time that it had been revised, which was a couple years before. So we kind of came in and created a new like fundamentals class. And then that same year, I also made with some of the other instructors a advanced class. So it's uh, and then like because new classes never quite work, they're almost prototypes of classes. You have to go in and revise them sometimes while you're doing them. And sometimes over the summer is usually kind of a big time where you're like, okay, this didn't work. This exercise is bad. Let's refresh these readings because they're now 3 years old. Um, Especially because I teach designing for AI, like the AI stuff moves so quickly that sometimes just during the week, keeping up with the news and what is out there and what is happening is really a challenge, and like a big part of my job is simply just absorbing what the state of the art is so that I can adjust the class based on that.
Mm.
So an example here is some of my students have been thinking about creating a product that helps to create SEO optimization for your website. And I was like, is SEO going to be a thing in a couple years, or has everything kind of changed in that regard because of the changes to search right now with all the kind of summarization of things? Is SEO really a thing? And so stuff like that is like, and the students were like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I was impressed that they even knew what SEO was, but they were like, well, what do you mean that things have changed? And I'm like, here's some essays that people are talking about this. So go take a look.
Nice, good answer. Eight is about lifelong learning. It's a popular topic. How do you stay up to date?
Yeah, I mean, I am too online for my own good.
Mm,
I I am on um, a number of social networks. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on um, other kinds of I am on other kinds of like private, like Discord channels and Signal channels and Signal chats and stuff like that.
mm,
So a lot of it is like stuff, I'm reading things that get kind of like sent to me. I also subscribe to, I think I'm now up to like 10 daily AI newsletters, which is just an enormous amount. It's AI and design newsletters. I'm at least at 10.
mm,
And that is just trying to absorb that and just be like, that is like you're running on a treadmill that never stops.
mm,
And keeping up with things is, I think, one of the hardest things for any creative person in uh in most mediums, I would think, but particularly when your stuff involves technology, which it almost everyone's medium now involves technology. So that is a really tricky thing. But yeah, and I can't say that I do a great job about it. There's always a student who's like, well, did you see that Meta released a new version of Llama in the last, recently? And I'm like, oh, when was that? And they're like, oh, an hour ago. And you're like, come on, I can't keep. I'm up to date, but not, maybe not like up to the minute up to date. So it is hard, but the students really keep me on my toes because they are definitely plugged in a way that I am not. And so trying to like listen to what they're talking about, they're thinking about is a really great way to do that. And of course, I'm also at a university where people are doing the most crazy, forward-thinking stuff that you can possibly imagine. And just trying to keep up with what my colleagues are presenting and publishing and researching is its own full-time job that is also amazing. I mean, I'm, with geniuses surrounding me, and here I am, I'm like, well, I'm a designer. Yeah, I know that, you are creating things that are 30 years in the future, and that sounds cool. I'm gonna go teach my kids the fundamentals of design. Um, but I mean, to me, I think that is one of the ways that you stay alive as a human being is to have curiosity on things. I'm always trying to find, I'm always trying to figure out how stuff works and what's behind the thing. And so having that kind of curiosity, I think, is a huge fuel for me in terms of uh, working or thinking or bringing in other things into my work. Or maybe it's just I have ADHD. I'm not sure.
mm. Great. The next question is about tools. Can you talk about your use of digital and or analog tools?
Mm, yeah. I have a couple different tools that I use. I mean, I obviously have things like designer tools like Figma, but I also have a ton of other things like uh, I have hand notebooks for certain things.
Mm,
Particularly when I'm working on a book, sometimes I will have a hand each book gets its own physical notebook that I put things in. Now I've actually started using Google's Notebook LM to put a whole bunch of like research and notes and all kinds of stuff into that, which has been amazing for certain tasks. Like you could say like, hey, summarize this research paper and tell me, what are the 5 things I need to know um, about explainability in AI or something like that.
Mm.
Or on the side project I'm working on, which is a historical fiction novel with real historical characters. I can say like, oh, look, when, give me all the locations that my main character lived in New York based on all these sources. And it'll give me a list and give me the dates and stuff like that. Stuff that would just ordinarily take me forever to kind of look through myself.
Mm.
So, um, and then I have tools like kind of lightweight tools like Notion I use a lot.
Mm.
I use a couple different forms of AI tools. Like I use Gemini, I use ChatGPT. I'm trying to think what other ones I use Leonardo.ai to make images a lot. So I definitely do float back and forth between digital and physical. Like my first instinct for a lot of things is to grab a pen and start to sketch or start to like kind of like write out a few little things or that kind of stuff. But if I'm doing anything that's more than just brainstorming or unstructured kind of thinking, then I'm usually turning to a digital tool to kind of turn that into something. Scrivener is my big writing tool these days. I keep wanting to move off of Scrivener, but I can't find anything that's better than Scrivener. So I'm kind of at like, do I need to design and build this thing myself? But I keep looking for a better tool and none appears. So Scrivener it is.
Mm.
And yeah, those are kind of my big ones.
Great. Halfway number 10. How do you deal with life work or work-life balance?
Mm. I don't. I mean, this is, I mean, d during the semester, it's almost impossible to find any kind of like life work balance because sometimes you're grading stuff late at night or first thing in the morning, or you're prepping stuff, or a student is having a crisis, um, uh, or that kind of stuff, or I procrastinate because I want to watch a TV show or play video games or something, and I'm like, oh crap. Um, Now, all that being said, I have a pretty great schedule. And so some things are amazing. Like I never have to, the way that my course schedule is this semester, I never have to get up early. So I can stay up late, do my like night owl stuff. And if I'm working till 10 because I live here alone, like no one cares and I'm just doing work and it's fine. I can be pretty flexible. But yeah, I mean, I find like, because I can get into these kind of hyper focused moments. I mean, sometimes I'm just in like, okay, I'm gonna crank this thing out and it's gonna take me 6 hours and I'm just gonna do it. Like sometimes when I have like midterm grades or something like that, I'm like, well, this weekend is shot. I just have to just do it. And so yeah, life work balance. I wish was more better, but I'm also a little bit of the school of thought where everything that's worth doing off balances your life. So
Mm.
I think that I mean, I think, having a relationship all balances your life. Having a great book project or a great design project, those things off balance your life. So, uh, you know, I, uh, all that being said, I do think there is definitely, a, you definitely do need to recharge. You can burn out. I have definitely burned out. Um, you definitely do need to like go, touch grass, as the kids say, and just be turned off of things. I used to do, and this was super helpful. I used to do these digital sabbaticals twice a year, where between Christmas and New Year's, I would just turn off my phone and no digital stuff except for taking pictures or directions. And also during the summer, I would do like a week of like nothing, where there's no digital stuff. And it was a great way. I mean, it's horrible for like the first couple days because you're like in such withdrawal, but then you actually do start to relax and start to be able to have a lot more perspective on things than you do if you're just constantly online, constantly digital, constantly thinking about the news or social or what other people are up to or whatever's happening in the world.
Hmm, good. Number 11, if you weren't doing what you do now, what might you be doing?
I would probably be unemployed. Just because, so many people my age um, have been kind of put out the pasture by the tech giants, and that was who I mostly made a lot of my work from was working for tech companies. Now, I could imagine myself doing things like being a consultant or I don't know, I could imagine being a high school teacher. I could imagine doing a number of things. I would love to just be a full-time writer. I think that would be a really fun career if I was less lazy and more committed, but perhaps I would be if my entire livelihood depended on it.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I don't know if, yeah, that's a really hard question for me because I'm not 100% sure what I would be doing. I've been so lucky in like having jobs and opportunities, even my current opportunity kind of like, I don't want to say fell into my lap, but was really, I was really helped along by a lot of people trying to help me find jobs. And I mean, this isn't to say that, I didn't scramble hard I mean, I've had long periods of unemployment in my career.
Hmm.
And but it's pretty hard to figure out like, okay, if I wasn't doing this, what would I do? And some of that for me is just my age. It's like what could I pivot to do being being the age that I am now. A lot of my contemporaries have turned to consulting or coaching or things like that. I don't the that method seems I don't know, maybe that doesn't feel like it's for me. But I support them in that. Maybe I would be a podcaster. I don't know. It's really hard to say.
Hmm.
I
Nice.
might be an Uber driver.
Okay, and then what would you not like to do with your career?
I wouldn't. I have been lucky in that I have almost never had to design a lot of things that I felt were objectionable or unethical or morally wrong. Like I feel like I've been pretty good about avoiding those situations. Now, certainly, I have swam in murky waters in the past. Like, I worked at Twitter, which some people would say is a, it and this was all pre-Elon even, that this was a force for amplifying negativity and things like that. But I never I never believed that. I believe that was true for some things, but I was also like I could see where it was also a really great force for good for a lot of things. For I mean, talk about, a great thing that surfaced just the most amazing random pieces of information and context and stuff like that. It was just an incredible machine for finding weird stuff. And I love that about it. And whatever hashtag keep Twitter weird or something like that. But I really love that um thing. So I would not want to go back to work at a place that I would hate, or work for, people I hate, or people whose mission I think is not is not great. I think that's probably the bullet that I feel like I've dodged a lot in my career.
Hmm, nice. So do you have a favorite word, quote, or sentence?
My favorite phrase is um like, yes, let's do that, or yes, I love that, or yes, I love that for you. I love it when a plan comes together, or I love it when there is enthusiasm either from a partner, or from a team, or uh, from a company, or when everyone's aligned, and feels like they have a mission, whether that's mission is for like a new feature or a new product, or a plan, like let's go out, hey, let's all go out to the bar tonight. Yeah, I love that. That I think is um my favorite phrase that I love to hear. It just fills me, it's like a jolt of electricity, like, yes, let's
Mhm.
do this.
Okay, and then a least favorite word, quote, or sentence.
Yeah, well, I mean, you probably guessed this one from, my least favorite thing is like no, or um, I think my one of my least favorite phrases is "you're doing it wrong." I've always hated that phrase. Like, oh, this is not how you do this. You're doing it wrong. And some of that is like, embarrassment about like, oh, is there a right way to do this? But some of it is also like, well, it's not my fault that I'm doing it wrong. Either no one told me how to do it right, or it was unclear. I mean, this is where the designer comes in, where I'm like, there's no sign here that tells me to wait in that line. I should have, if you wanted that, you should have put a sign, wait in line to do that. Um, or when people are like, well, this is not how you should do this kind of thing, whether that's like, I don't know. I mean, you'll see this all the time where people are like, there is a right way to do X, and if you're not doing X, then you're not a writer, you're not a designer, you're not a teacher. All those kind of gatekeeping and that kind of stuff, that drives me nuts. Like, I don't like that feeling of being, either told no, or feeling stupid because I didn't know the right way to do it, or feeling like there's some authority that's like from on high going like, you shouldn't be doing it this way. I and maybe this is an authority issue with me, that I just don't like that feeling of feeling like there was some unwritten rule that I didn't know of.
Hmm.
That drives me wild.
Hmm. Great. Okay, and you're choosing one word to describe yourself. What word do you choose?
Curious, I think.
Hmm.
I think that finding things out, I think, has been kind of the thing that I have liked to do ever since I was a little kid,
Mm,
like finding like how does this thing work or how does this thing go or oh what's you know uh and I feel like I'm like the happiest when I'm like discovering like something new or I'm starting to understand something new, whether that's a new like framework to look at the world or it's a new fact that really changes my opinion on things,
mm,
or it's just understanding how something complex works that I didn't understand before. It's like, why is this like this? And actually, moving from a professional industry world to academic world has been a real eye opener in that sense because I had all these like preconceived notions about what a university is and how it operates, and I was completely wrong about so many of the things that it's almost comical now, like 2.5 years in, to be like, why would I have ever thought that? Like
mm,
the example is, why did I ever think that universities don't really care that much about money? They care a lot about money. They care a really lot about money. Not to the extent that a business or especially like a failing business cares about money, but they definitely care about money. And so and so like my naivete about that is pretty embarrassing now on the other side of it. But I find that being curious is is the lifeblood of everything. I want to see stuff. I want to experience stuff. Even if I like end up hating it, which I frequently do, like, oh, I'll try, I'm definitely one of those, I'll try anything once, but if I really hate it, I'm probably not going to do it again, kind of people. So, which has gotten me in trouble on, eating weird things in foreign lands. Uh, a candied or no, a curried jellyfish comes to mind that I still haven't gotten over 10 years later.
nice. Okay, final stretch here. Number 16, what keeps you up at night?
I have a thing that that is a joke I call like Maslow's hierarchy of screams, and it is a it's a play on the, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but it's, everything from uh, you know, the slow boiling climate change to, rising fascism, rising inequality, um, all these extremely systematic, wicked problems that are out there that I feel like no one is addressing in a systematic way. Like I think people are taking on pieces of stuff, but no one is thinking about these giant problems. And to me, I feel like sometimes, and maybe this is just because I'm, a man in his 50s that, that it really feels like we are headed into, a dark place over the next couple decades. And so much of which could have been prevented but was not. And I see no appetite to do it. I see no appetite to change. In fact, I see the opposite.
Mm,
And I mean, one of my secret AI hopes is that there's so many problems that are too challenging for uh, because they're just at a different scale than we're used to operating either, as human beings or in a political thing. Um, that, I was definitely hoping that AI would help solve some of those. And I don't know, maybe I've lost some hope in that because I'm like, well, even if AI came up with the answer, like, look, we all need to do these. Here's the 10 things that would be the most productive. I don't know if there's a political will to do it. And maybe it will take something very radical to shake up the system in order for us to really uh, start to pay attention to some of these things. But this is the stuff that keeps me up at night. A low simmering dread of the next several decades.
It's 17. What's a dream you're chasing?
I mentioned this briefly. So I am working on a novel that I have been working on now for almost 6 or 7 years, maybe more. So my dream is to finish it. It's set during the American Revolutionary War, and we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of that. And so I'd love to have that out on that year because it would make a lot of sense. It is timely based on not just the subject matter, but also the actual time that we're in. So I would really like to finish that. Fiction is such a different beast than the nonfiction books that I've written, where the nonfiction books you're trying to make sure that you're covering the topic in a truthful way and uh, trying to make it entertaining, but also informative. And the structure of working with fiction is very different. I mean, you are trying in a certain sense to manipulate people's thoughts and emotions in a way that leaves a profound mark. And it's a very hard genre. I'm surprised that anyone can do it. I wrote three novels back in my 20s and they were all pretty bad, and so nothing really ever came of them. Um, but trying to reboot this thing in my 40s and 50s was was quite a quite a muscle to start exercising again.
Grade 18. What inspires you?
People people that are like doing thoughtful work always inspire me. People that are taking care in what it is they are doing, whether that is woodworking or cooking or uh, anything where there is competence on display is always extremely inspiring to me, where it's like, oh, you know what you're talking about. You know how to do this. Like those kinds of things to me are always extremely like just comforting, like they are just like, oh wow, not everyone is faking their expertise. We live in this kind of era where it's like, well, anyone can be this thing or anyone can be that thing. And then the answer is no, that's not true. There are people that have a lot of deep, deep skills. And when those skills get exercised, it can be extremely inspiring. It's like, whether that's, politically or medical or fixing a car, like any of those things, like to me is like, oh wow, you were able to diagnose a problem, fix it, and you understood all the nuances and complications and didn't try to claim that you knew it and didn't know it. Those kinds of things I think those kinds of things are demoralizing to me, whereas competence is always inspiring.
Mm, Perfect. And last couple here, number 19. Any advice you'd like to share?
Some advice I like to give in terms of creative work, whether that's design or writing or whatever, is that it's always a mess before it's not.
Mm,
It's always, it always will feel terrible. It will always look terrible. It will always be scattered and not cohesive. And that is a stage that you then have to get through to to unify it, to polish it, to do things with. And to me, I often get demoralized at the like mess stage, and it's like, ugh, that this is just you know. I often am like, this is such a mess. And this is why the novel's taken so long, is that I have like the outline and I have fragments in some places and I have full chapters in others, and it just feels like a mess. Um, but you but until you have a lot of the pieces and stuff out there and you can manipulate them and put them together and polish them, I mean, that's a whole other great skill, and that is an important part of the creative process is taking the mess and making something out of it.
mm,
And I think that is my piece of advice is to like don't despair when it's a mess because it's always going to be a mess until it's not.
mm. Okay, awesome. And finally, number 20, how can our listeners keep tabs on you and what's our call to action?
I am on Blue Sky. I'm Danny Boy at bluesky.net. That's a good way to keep track of me or follow me. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Dan Saffer on LinkedIn. Those are probably the best places to find me these days. And yeah, hopefully look for my books where all good books are sold. And that's basically it.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much. I promised my UX students here in Vancouver that I would share this episode with them. So much appreciation and much gratitude for this. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. You're welcome.